Welcome to today's deep dive. We'll be exploring the fascinating and kind of complicated relationship between Romy Schneider and Alain Delon.
Oh, yeah, those two.
You know them.
I do, yeah. Big fan.
They're kind of legendary, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're basing this deep dive mainly on this online article.
Yeah.
It's called "The Greatest Love Story Ends with a Moving Letter."
Hmm. Interesting.
And it really zeroes in on this letter that Delon wrote to Schneider after her death.
Oh, wow.
And that's what makes this whole thing so interesting because, he left her for someone else.
Oh, right. Years before.
Years before, yeah. And yet his letter is just overflowing with, emotion.
Right.
So our mission today is to kind of figure out why.
Yeah. It's easy to get swept up in all the emotion in the letter.
Right.
The article's author definitely did.
For sure.
But, a single letter can't tell the whole story of a relationship as complicated as theirs.
It's like judging a book by its cover, basically.
That's right.
So we need to dig deeper. Okay, so let's start with something that really stood out to me. Delon using this nickname,
Oh, yeah.
Piepele.
Yeah.
It means little Gaul in German.
Huh.
It kind of struck me as a little possessive, maybe even objectifying.
Interesting choice, for sure. Especially since he keeps using it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
like throughout the letter.
Yeah, it almost feels like he's maybe subconsciously trying to control her image.
Right.
Or how he wants to remember her even after she's gone.
Like he's preserving her in his mind as this little doll,
Yeah.
like he fell in love with,
Mm-hmm.
and ignoring the woman she actually became. Over the years they were apart.
Yeah, totally. And you see that same kind of shaping of her image when he talks about their first meeting on the set of Christine.
Okay.
It's almost like a fairy tale.
Like a romantic fairy tale.
Exactly. He emphasizes how they went against her family's wishes.
Yeah.
Made it seem like this unstoppable, passionate love.
But is that really how it went down?
Yeah, could be a bit romanticized. Don't forget, he's writing this after she died, probably going through a whirlwind of emotions, grief, regret, maybe even some guilt.
Yeah.
It's possible he's shaping the story,
Right.
to fit a certain image of their relationship.
Of their relationship and himself.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
he's controlling the narrative,
Potentially.
making himself look better.
It's one way to see it, but there's also this other interesting thing he brings up.
Oh, yeah.
This V of Rembrandt they both had between their eyebrows.
Oh, yeah. I remember that from the article.
Visconti, their director, saw it as like a physical sign of their anxieties and fears.
Wow. So like their anxieties were literally written on their faces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Delon uses this to suggest this deep connection between them, almost like a shared destiny. They understood each other's struggles, especially in their acting careers.
Like no one else could
Right.
because of their shared anxieties and career paths.
Mm-hmm.
So they had this unique bond.
Yeah, and that leads him to this claim that Schneider's brilliance on screen
Yeah.
came directly from her personal pain.
So her real life struggles fueled her acting.
That's what he's implying.
But isn't that kind of romanticizing pain?
Absolutely. It's a fine line he's walking, acknowledging her talent,
Right.
but maybe also using her vulnerabilities to strengthen this narrative of their connection.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. And then there are these hints about the darker aspects of their relationship, too.
What do you mean?
He mentions her struggles with alcohol and tranquilizers,
Oh, right.
suggesting they both relied on these coping mechanisms.
So he is admitting to their struggles.
He is, but he's also maybe shifting the blame
Okay.
onto things like the pressures of their careers.
It's like he's acknowledging the darkness, but making it seem like they faced it together.
Yes, a united front against the world.
Right.
And then he goes on to say that acting was what kept her going, gave her strength,
Until.
until David, her son, died. After that, he says her heart was too tired to fight.
So acting was her lifeline.
According to him, yes.
But isn't he kind of downplaying her own strength and resilience?
It's a good point. It's important to remember we're only getting his side of the story.
And it's filtered through his grief and maybe guilt.
Exactly.
So there's a pattern emerging here.
What do you see?
It feels like Delon's letter might be more about shaping how we see their relationship than actually giving us the full picture.
That's a great point. And it begs the question, why is he so invested in controlling this narrative even after her death?
Okay, so that's what we need to unpack.
Yes.
Let's dig deeper into this letter and see if we can figure out Delon's motivations and untangle this complicated relationship even more.
I'm ready.
This is like peeling back layers of an onion.
Yeah.
Each sentence reveals something new about their dynamic.
Oh, for sure.
What about this next part of the letter? What sticks out to you?
Well, he admits their lives went in different directions,
Right.
but he says they still stayed connected. through what he calls these appeals.
Well, appeals.
Yeah, like reaching out, needing each other, even from a distance.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then their reunion for the pool, he makes it sound like a turning point.
Absolutely. From this passionate romance
Nice.
to a deeper, more brotherly love.
But could that be him trying to downplay the hurt he caused?
Ooh, that's possible.
Like making it seem like a natural progression instead of, a painful breakup?
Yeah, he could be trying to soften the blow. I mean, for himself and anyone reading the letter.
And then he goes into this very touching account of Schneider's last night,
Oh,
alone listening to music drawing for her daughter.
it's poignant, but it also raises some questions.
Yeah, like what's he really trying to say here?
He focuses on her heart being hurt so much suddenly.
Right.
Like it just gave up. Couldn't carry the pain anymore.
It's so sad.
Yeah.
But it also plays into that narrative he's building
How so?
by highlighting her frailty, her sudden decline.
Yeah.
It almost makes it seem like he wasn't responsible for any of her pain.
Wow, that's a really good point. He's shifting the focus
Right.
away from his actions
Yeah.
and towards this idea that her fate was unavoidable.
Okay, so then he talks about organizing her burial in France, near her son and near him.
It's a grand gesture, for sure, but it's loaded with symbolism.
So much symbolism.
It speaks volumes about their bond, even after the romance was over.
But it also makes you wonder,
What's that?
was it truly an act of love and devotion? Or was it him inserting himself into her story one last time?
Like a final act of possession.
Yeah.
Ensuring she's close to him even in death.
It's such a complex gesture. You could see it in so many different ways.
Absolutely.
This whole letter, it's like a hall of mirrors,
Yeah.
reflecting Delon's grief, his love,
Mm-hmm.
but also his need to control the narrative and maybe even deal with his guilt.
Yeah, it's a fascinating puzzle.
It really makes you think about how even in grief, people try to protect their image.
It's true. So how do we as readers sort through all this?
Right.
How do we separate the genuine love from the manipulation?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
We can't know for sure what was going on in his head when he wrote it,
Right.
but by looking closely at his words, the language he uses, what he chooses to emphasize,
Mm-hmm.
we can start to understand his relationship with Schneider.
In life and in death.
Exactly. And that brings us to a key takeaway from this deep dive.
What's that?
Even with something as seemingly straightforward as a letter expressing grief,
Yeah.
there are all these layers of subtext, hidden motivations,
Unspoken truths.
exactly shaping the narrative.
So even in the face of raw emotion,
There's more to the story.
always more to the
Right. And that raises the question, can we ever truly understand these complicated relationships?
Especially ones as passionate and tumultuous as theirs.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so after all that, where do we even begin to wrap this up?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway for me
Yeah.
is that it all comes down to perspective.
Perspective.
Yeah, Delon's letter gives us a look into his grief
Mhm.
and how he saw their love story. But it's just that,
Just his side.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's filtered through his memories, his emotions,
Yeah.
and probably his need to protect his image.
So it's like we're looking at this painting
Okay.
where the artist is choosing what to show us.
Yeah, and what to leave out.
Right. Exactly.
And as the viewer,
Yeah.
we got to be aware of that.
That artistic license.
Exactly. It's subjective.
Right.
So we can appreciate the beauty, the emotion,
Yeah.
but we also have to remember that it's just one interpretation.
Of a much bigger picture.
Right.
So we end up with more questions than answers.
Maybe, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
How so?
Sometimes the best insights come from sitting with the uncertainty,
Okay.
accepting that we may never have all the answers.
So even with all this analysis,
Mm-hmm.
Delon's letter doesn't give us a clear-cut answer about his love for Schneider.
No, it doesn't. But it does offer a fascinating look into how complex human emotions really are,
Yeah?
the power of storytelling, and
Mhm.
how love and loss leave their mark.
Their story still captivates us all these years later.
It really does, and it's because it defies easy explanations.
They were complicated people.
absolutely lived these passionate, sometimes messy lives,
Yeah.
and their relationship was a reflection of that.
It's easy to put iconic figures on a pedestal,
For sure.
but this reminds us that they're human too.
With flaws.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, all of it.
And I think that's why their story resonates so much.
Because it's a reflection of our own experiences.
Exactly. Love, loss, the search for connection,
These are things we all go through.
no matter who we are.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left feeling just really amazed by how complex relationships can be.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I hope our listeners feel the same.
Yeah.
We may never fully grasp every detail of their love story,
Right.
but the journey of exploring it,
Of asking these questions.
yeah, it can teach us so much about ourselves and the world.
It's true. Sometimes the journey is more important than the destination.
I think that's a perfect way to put it.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you then.